Hello, I am here for a 3-day solo backpacking trip in the Roan Highlands along the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina and Tennessee. This is one of my favorite places to come backpack. Many people say it is the most spectacular section of the Appalachian Trail, so I'm excited to get going. This is the top of Round Bald, a little over 5,800 feet. We can see Grassy Ridge Bald down there to the right. You never know what the weather's going to be in Roan. It can change from bald to bald. Definitely looks like we got some rain coming in. And then up there to the left is Roan High Knob. Here's the view from Engine Gap. Round Bald is right there to the right. And there's Grassy Ridge Bald and Jane Bald heading north. And as we continue to work around the gap here, we can see the big storm. So this is the only part of the Roan Highlands trip that requires any navigation. The rest is just bombing up and down the Appalachian Trail. But if you are coming northbound from Carver's Gap along the AT and you want to head to Over Mountain Shelter, you'll hang a right on Over Mountain Victory Trail. And that's where I'm about to head now. The rain has finally started to come down. And we made it to Over Mountain Shelter just in time. The rains are here, but as always, it's a beautiful view looking down the valley from Over Mountain Shelter. Hopefully it'll clear up in a little bit. The summer shower has subsided, and now it's a beautiful day here at Over Mountain Shelter. Over Mountain Shelter was repurposed from a barn in the early 1980s and has housed countless AT hikers, but was deemed structurally unsafe and closed in September 2019. Day one of the trip in the Roan Highlands has been a great day. Always a very beautiful hike out here in Roan. The weather was very cooperative. It started storming about 30 seconds before I hit the shelter, and so I was able to batten down the hatches in there for a while and then come out and set up the tent once the rain passed. I'm actually out here set up next to a couple people who I met in Uwharrie on a trip earlier. And it's nice to see these guys again. But we're gonna go ahead and call this end of day one. Good night.
Good morning. Made it to day two. Had a nice, relaxing evening and night yesterday. Got to hang out with my friends Bob and Allison and Joe and the rest of their group. Met a guy who hauled a guitar out here and played some nice songs by the campfire. So it was a pretty cool experience. The night was great. No rain came through. It's a beautiful, clear morning today. So hoping for the best in terms of weather. And looking forward to the day's plan, which is to kind of do a day hike down to Hump Mountain, hike back up here to the tent, pack things up, and then find a campsite between here and Carver's Gap for night 2.
I'll see you guys on Hump Mountain in a little bit.
Alrighty. Okay, sounds good. Hike.
Yep. The Appalachian Trail rises up on a ridge here above the Overmountain Shelter, which gives us a great look at the valley and the shelter itself. It's a beautiful day out here along the Appalachian Trail in the Roan Highlands. And even when you're not at the top of the balds, you still have awesome views. Here's a 360-degree look from this rock outcrop near the summit of Little Hump Mountain. And there's the top up there. This is the view from the northern side of Little Hump Mountain. And there's awesome cloud gathering in the valley down there. And there's Hump Mountain. Hey buddy, got a little rabbit here right along the trail. One of the coolest things about hiking in Roan is you get to see the trail laid out in front of you. And there's the way up to Hump Mountain. Made it up to the top of Hump Mountain. It's a beautiful day. Hump Mountain's a little tricky when you're coming up. There's like 3 or 4 times you think you're at the top and there's still quite a ways to go. But then you make it up and it is totally worth it. I've made it to Dali Flats, which is a popular place to camp for those who do the Carver's Gap to 19E or vice versa route of the Roan Highlands. And this is as far north as I'm going to go on this trip. Now it's time to turn around and head back. Heading back up Houston Ridge to get to Hump Mountain again, and it is just absolutely beautiful bald ridgeline hiking up here. You can see the forested north side of Hump Mountain, and then as we continue to work around, all the ridges out in the distance. Super beautiful. Here's the view from the Hump Mountain, coming back down towards Over Mountain Shelter, heading south to Carver's Gap. Made it back to Little Hump Mountain on my way towards Over Mountain Shelter, and here's the view looking south. Closing back in on Over Mountain Shelter. Here's the valley that it overlooks. And there's the shelter down there with my tent still set up in the field, which is good news. Got camp packed up at Over Mountain Shelter and gonna head a couple miles southbound on the AT towards Carver's Gap to give myself a shorter walk out tomorrow. Let's do it to it. Home sweet home. I've made it to camp for the night. I'm just 5 to 10 minutes south of Stan Murray Shelter, and I'm looking forward to getting set up, cooking up some dinner, and enjoying a relaxing evening on my last night of this trip in the Roan Highlands. Day 2 of my trip in the Roan Highlands was another great day. Always spectacular hiking in Roan, up along the balds, and you also get to see a lot of cool people. So it's fun to hang out with my friends Bob and Allison and Joe and the rest of their group. And I also got to meet another cool guy named Pete. Pete had one of the largest packs I've ever seen. It was a 110-liter pack. He was crushing it out there. Again, a beautiful day of hiking. No rain today. The weather was perfect the whole day. Hoping that, of course, it'll hold off tonight. But I've got camp set up. I ate some dinner. It's time to call it a night. This will be the end of day 2. Good night.
Well, good morning. Made it to day 3. It was a nice, peaceful night last night. There was some thunder rolling in through the evening, but it never ended up raining, which is fortunate. The winds did pick up at some point throughout the night, so it'll be interesting to see how the last couple balds turn out today. Hiking through those, maybe the winds will die off by then. It's been a great trip. This is the last day of the trip. Yesterday was probably about 14 to 15 miles because of a little bit of backtracking that I did. But a lot of that was without a pack, so it wasn't too bad overall. Today will hopefully be somewhere in the 4 to 5 mile range at most. And that's dependent on if I end up going up to Grassy Ridge Bald, which I would like to if the weather is good enough to do so. It's been a great trip out here. You always see a lot of people in the Roan Highlands. It's a great sense of community out along the Appalachian Trail, and it's been a good time. And looking forward to finishing off a good day today. Back out over Jane Bald and Round Bald and Grassy Ridge Bald. Camp is packed up, and it's time to finish off the last day of my 3-day backpacking trip here in the Roan Highlands. It's quite windy out right now, and I just passed a couple guys who said it was still foggy out on the balds. Hoping that'll clear up by the time I get out there, so there'll be a couple views to finish off the trip. Let's do it to it. I'm at the trail intersection between the Appalachian Trail and Grassy Ridge Trail, and with how foggy it is, there's really no reason for me to go up to the top of Grassy Ridge Bald. I've been there before, it's cool, but you know, there won't be much to see with the fog, so I'm gonna keep carrying on. It is a little clearer down here in the gap. We can definitely see that there is a lot of fog out there, a lot of clouds blowing through. And when you get back up to the top of the balds, we'll see Jane Bald come into the shot here in a second. Those are pretty shrouded in fog. And there it is blowing through.
Obviously, people come out to Roan for the spectacular long-range views, but there's also something magical about being up on the top of these bolds, surrounded by clouds. You feel like maybe you're the only person in the world. And here's the view from Jane Bald this morning. On a clear day, this is one of my favorite views in the world. From this vantage point on Round Bald, you can see Jane Bald, Grassy Ridge Bald, Little Hump Mountain, and Hump Mountain. So you get a nice look over the entirety of the Roan Highlands. But today, we get to enjoy the mystery of the fog. We've got a decent little view here on the south side of Round Bald, looking up to Roan High Knob, shrouded in cloud, and then Carver's Gap down there. So almost back to the parking lot. I really enjoyed this little forested patch right before Carver's Gap. It's pretty unique forest up here, maybe 5,700 feet or so in elevation, and they say that this is the environment where the saw-toothed owl lives, and that is the smallest owl in North America. I've never seen one, but supposedly they're here. Well, I finished up my 3-day backpacking trip in the Roan Highlands. I'm in a little grotto here, right beside the parking area. A great time, beautiful, beautiful trip as always in Roan. Nice sunny the first 2 days. It's very cloudy today, but it's just part of the Roan experience. It's a great time hiking with a lot of different people. There's always a lot of people out in Roan, so you get to chat with them, hear their stories. It's always cool to do. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the road and get some food and take a shower at home. Until next time, goodbye. Let's take a look at the map for my trip in Roan. This is taken from the book Backpacking North Carolina by Joe Miller. Shout out to Joe for a great and informative book. On this trip, I started at Carver's Gap on the Appalachian Trail and backpacked over Round Bald, Jane Bald, past Grassy Ridge, down to Over Mountain Victory Trail, and spent my first night near Over Mountain Shelter. That was about 6 miles for the first day. On day 2, I day hiked back up to the Appalachian Trail, over Little Hump Mountain, down to Dali Flats on the North Carolina-Tennessee border, then retraced my steps back up Hump Mountain, Little Hump Mountain, Over Mountain Shelter, packed up camp at Over Mountain, and then moved another 2 or 2.5 miles back towards Carver's Gap. Day 2 was around 14 to 15 miles due to some extra backtracking that I did. On day 3, I finished off the Appalachian Trail back to Carver's Gap, and that was around 3 or 3.5 miles, for a total trip of maybe 23 to 24 miles.